Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second edition of the Fit Informed podcast, part of the Awesemo podcast series. At least in the golf section, it's a 3-part series. You get one every day, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Yesterday, if you haven't listened, it's the Opening Tee podcast where I break down all the happenings from last week, try to give you a quick review just in case you missed the action. I get you previewed for this week. That leads you into this podcast where I go over the Fit Informed. Simply and quickly, it's the culmination of info from the 3 articles that I've written already. The first cut, the course history, the first cut, the Fit Inform article, and the strokes gained analysis article. What I do is I try and bring it all together. I try and give you a quick little information about each one, and then try and find some guys that are supposed to be or could be a good course fit. Last week, I highlighted it looks like about 6 guys in the other course fit segment. In the other course fit segment, I get from the analysis of strokes gained in recent form, and 5 of those 6 guys made the cut with a couple of top 10s. So pretty good showing by the content. Always like to see how we're doing. Of course, I had a couple of misses as well. So let's jump right into it. But before we do, let's talk about the podcast giveaway that we've got going on over here at Awesemo. You can win an Awesemo Plus weekly pass. All you got to do is subscribe, step 1. Step 2, rate and leave a 5-star review of our channel with your Awesemo Plus username or Twitter handle. We should be having that giveaway later on in the week. And before we jump in, let's quickly review that course profile just in case you haven't caught my first cut article yet. And one of the new elements to that article is me adding in a little bit more of a course profile. And what that course profile undertakes is really looking at statistical measures from previous years and where the course, not the players, where the course itself fits into that. So let's go over that really quickly as we did last week. So I go over strokes gained off the tee. And off the tee, it's very similar to Colonial is Harbour Town. That's where we're playing this week. The course is short and tight. The average drive around 275 yards. Believe it or not, that ranked 3rd on the PGA Tour last year, only sitting behind the courses at Pebble Beach. Courses at Pebble Beach, Spyglass Hill, and Pebble having a lower average drive. All right, on the approach to the greens. Before I move on from off the tee, accuracy. It is the 21st hardest fairways to hit at just over 60%. So believe it or not, as you may not be able to drive it far, the fairways are relatively easy to hit. And from the course notes that we've gotten from passed down from the tour, it looks like those might be even easier to hit, as many of the fairways were widened over the last year. On the approach to the green, however, the greens in regulation were the 6th hardest to hit on tour last year, as players only hit 58% of their greens. Again, likely due to the small greens. And I find that out by proximity to the hole, actually ranked 10th on tour. So while hitting the greens may not be hard, when you're on the greens, you're normally pretty close to the green. Pretty close to the hole. That was a little idiom there. I apologize. Which does make sense. Around the greens, scrambling percentage last year was one of the best at 63% of the time you were able to get up and down, which was good for 42nd out of 49 courses, so one of the easiest. But is that more to around the green or is that more on the green? And what I found was it was more going towards the on the green, as putting on this course was one of the easiest on tour and seems to be each and every year. I look at that by a few measures. One of them is the one-putt percentage. It was exactly 49 of 49 last year, being the easiest to one-putt from and the highest one-putt percentage. Also, it had the 48th overall putting average. So obviously either the greens aren't hard or the greens are normally just running so good that it's easier, or the last one, which may or may not have some inclination here, is that it's the week after the Masters, and as hard as the Augusta greens are, maybe the players coming to play from there are able to have some confidence coming to the much easier and normally slower greens here at Harbour Town. Who knows exactly what it is, but still, it all gives us a good profile into search for the right golfer that'll help our PGA DFS lineups. And if you haven't tried it yet, then you need to try Super Draft. The future of daily fantasy sports has arrived. Experience SuperDraft's exclusive game mode multiplier. Say goodbye to all those salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want to build to draft your very own dream team. Imagine if I made my dream team last week of Mori, Kaua, and Spieth, and certainly not Daniel Berger. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience Danny Fantasy Sports the way you want. SuperDraft offers contests for PGA, NASCAR, and almost every other sport, of course, when it's going on. So you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for SuperDraft today using our promo code Awesemo, and you're going to get a nice little free deposit bonus with your first deposit of $10 or more. Download in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. SuperDraft, no limits, more winning. All right, let's move into recent form as we start off with this. Obviously, we only have 1 week of what we'd call recent form, but I thought we'd go a little bit deeper and take a look at all of the starts from the beginning of the year. First off, there are a couple of golfers that have made every cut this year. Joel Damon, Matthew Fitzpatrick, Ty Hatton, Hideki Matsuyama, and Taylor Gooch. Only 4 golfers have 4 or more top 10s. That's Bryson DeChambeau, Daniel Berger, Rory McIlroy, and Sung J M. Now, on those made every cut this year portion, there are a couple of more guys that I didn't listed. But I likely talked about them last week. So, like Rory McIlroy, I don't believe he's missed a cut this year either. Those are just some names that I found interesting that maybe you hadn't figured have made every cut this year. When we flip that over to the miscut side, something's got to give for these poor guys. Martin Traynor has missed 7, while Mackenzie Hughes, Scott Brown, Brian Gay, Jim Herman, and Roger Sloan have all missed 6. But that's not really as telling as this next one, where they haven't had a top 25 since the start of the year, not including the Tournament of Champions. Joaquin Niemann, Tyler Duncan, Doc Redman, and Aaron Wise. No top 25 since the Sony Open. If you go back to the Tournament of Champions there out in Maui, Joaquin Niemann did. He had a top 10 there. But interesting, 4 real quality golfers. Tyler Duncan had a win over the fall swing. Doc Redman, one of the good up-and-coming young golfers, got his PGA Tour card through his play last year. And then, of course, Aaron Wise, this super talented young kid from Oregon. No top 25 is very interesting. I suspect one of those 4 will make it this week. They're all just too good to have them not be in the top echelon of players. All right, let's move over into course history, and where we start with players that have multiple top 10s in the last 5 years here. Of course, I could find some more if I went a little further back, but we're just sticking with the last 5 years. Matt Kuchar, no surprise. Webb Simpson, Kevin Kisner, Ian Poulter, Brandon Grace, Kevin Streelman, Luke, who has possibly the best course history out of anybody here, Luke Donald. Kevin Na, who's not playing this week, so I apologize to even bring him up. Kevin Na withdrew yesterday. And Troy Merritt. That's probably the most interesting one there, as the golfers before, I kind of loop them all together. They're all short, accurate hitters, good with their irons, and good putters, which is what you need here. Really what we're looking for is quality off the tee, solid iron play, good putter. Don't really need around the green that much here. So speaking of that, looking for good iron players, looking for a guy with a good putter, other course fits that either may have played well here before, may not have played, but others that I could at least see fitting in as a good course fit here. And then we'll talk about these guys for a couple of minutes as well. Colin Morikawa, we'll first start off with him. Obviously, Colin Morikawa, not the best putter in the world. We certainly know that from watching last week, missing so many inside of 10 feet. He should have run away with the tournament. He ended up really just handing it to Daniel Berger for all intents and purposes there at the end, missing that inside of 5 feet in the playoff. But still, if there's any course that rewards super iron play more so than other courses, it is definitely Harbour Town, especially with how consistent Morikawa has been off the tee. I love him here again this week. Maybe a name you're not familiar with is Adam Schenk, although he does have a pretty great last name for a golfer. He is one of those guys that have gained at least 1 stroke putting and 1 stroke on their approaches in at least 5 starts in both categories. So what I'm looking for there is a guy that can get hot with their irons and hot with their putter. And he was one of the only ones that met that criteria of 5 and 5. So very interesting to note there. Kevin Streelman is another one that I already mentioned as having 2 top 10s in the last 5 years here. And it goes, when you look at his statistical profile, it's no surprise. He can get really hot with his irons. He doesn't hit the ball a long way. And within that, not hitting it a long way, hits it relatively accurate, and can get hot with the putter. So Kevin Streelman, certainly another name to look out for. Vaughn Taylor is another one that, again, it's very similar profiles to the guys mentioned above. Vaughn Taylor can get very hot with his wedges, and also at times, obviously, can get hot with his putter, gaining at least 1 stroke in at least 4 starts, and, of course, gaining at least 1 stroke on the approaches in at least 4 starts as well. And the last 2 on this list, before we head out of here, and I like to keep these podcasts, because it's a 3-part, I like to keep them at 15 to 20 minutes. I think my opening tee podcast yesterday was maybe a little longer at 25 minutes. Apologize about that. This one looks like probably we're going to get under 15 minutes today, before we prep for my last one, the Against the Grain, Reading the Grain podcast, where I talk specifically and only about ownership. Okay, back to the players. We are back talking about Kevin Streelman, Vaughn Taylor. Just mentioned those guys. The next 2, Ryan Moore. Ryan Moore is a guy that's been around for a while and is not known to be a good putter at all. But interestingly enough, when I dug into his stats, he has gained more than a stroke putting at least 4 times and is very good with his irons. Now, last week, Ryan Moore was not able to make the weekend. And, of course, maybe that should have suited him, as it is a similar course to this. But the driving distance of last week came into play more than it will this week, and I believe that kind of pushed out some of these guys that missed the cut last week, although Kevin Streelman missed it due to putting, so maybe he'll turn that around this week. And the last guy is Mr. Hole-in-One himself last week, Sung Kang, who even with the hole-in-one was not able to make the cut, but when he gets hot with his putter, he certainly can light it up, and also with the irons, as he was on one of only 5 or maybe 10 at the most that had at least 1 stroke gain with his putter and with his irons. So to review, Colin, the other course fit, not even looking at course history. I have no idea of the course history, except for Kevin Streelman, because I wrote him down as being a guy with multiple top 10s here in the last 5 years. The other guys, though, again, I'm just looking at their statistical basis and seeing how I believe they would be a good course fit. So put a couple of lineups in there for me, for Adam Schenk and Ryan Moore, as well as maybe a couple with Vaughn Taylor and Kevin Streelman. Sung Kang, on the other hand, I'm still not as sold on Sung Kang. Even the statistics would point me in the direction as, getting a hole-in-one and then missing the cut means that you're probably not in the best form. But anyways, here we are. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is part 2 of the 3-part Awesemo podcast series, the golf podcast for the company here. The last one focuses on my 4 pricing sections. Above 10K this week, we're going to get 6 golfers, whereas last week we only had 4. Then, of course, I go into the value section of 9 to 8K, starting to look for some deep dives in the 7K section, and, of course, diving in head first into the pool with golfers under 7K. We'll look for some pivots in that section because not many guys will be owned, and we'll talk about also the highest owned in the other ones. So, until next time, if you're looking for more content, more golf content, in the audio or video fashion, we of course have our PGA DFS first look out this week with Jeff Ulrich, Sal Vitri, and I think Nolan Kelly was in this week, subbing in for Ben Raza. Great show where we talk about all of the opening odds and salary discussions that came out from yesterday, Monday. And then, of course, if you're listening to this, I'm recording this at about 12 o'clock on Tuesday. If you're listening to this within the next hour of when I put it out, great. Come back and join Ben Raza and Timothy Frank at Fantasy Golf Man on their PGA DFS strategy show at 2:30. Then, of course, the last show in the industry, the Live Before Lock on Wednesday nights, 8:30. Ben Raza and I, we are breaking down everything and having a fun time doing it, playing a little Make the Cut segment and the alike. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this quick little podcast into the fit and form this week. and hopefully found some golfers that you can be targeting, and maybe also a couple that you shouldn't be targeting this week. So until next time, everybody, thanks for joining, and we'll see you on the other side. Cheers.